Welcome to Office Hours 46. It is a pleasure to be with you on our second week of Educational China. Last week we were at Tsinghua University, and I had physically been at Tsinghua just a few days before that, as well as at Renmin University. As you may know, in the last few days, if you've been watching the news, those of you who are watching this in live time, as it were, we've had an enormous amount of snow in Boston, 78 inches in the last 2 weeks. And so I have fled south here to beautiful North Carolina to the campus of Duke. And as you know, Duke University and Duke Kunshan University are central to the story that we're telling in the second week of Educational China. And I'm here with Dr. Nora Bynum. Nora, thank you very, very much for joining us. My co-author in our Harvard Business School case on Kunshan Incorporated, and the vice provost for Duke Kunshan University and China Initiatives here at Duke University. So Nora, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for giving me asylum down here at Duke.
Thank you. You're welcome for any kind of inclement weather.
Thank you. Now, since you were there, visiting the campus in the module that you will have seen, things have happened at DKU. And can you give us a bit of an update? What's happened from this last September, Nora?
Well, we had our first semester, and we had more than 60 undergraduate students for our global learning semester. And we had 10 students in our graduate programs in medical physics and global health. And we also had our Masters of Management Studies, which started here at Duke, but is now in Kunshan. What I would like to say is that we had a very successful first semester. The faculty were excellent and very well received by the students. The students were incredibly talented and hardworking. We couldn't have been more pleased.
Well, I visited out there with your faculty in October, and it was this moment of transition because the school had begun. The construction was not quite done.
Correct.
Although it's so beautiful. It's such a stunning campus. Now, even prettier, I have to tell you guys, even prettier than all of the pictures that we saw last year. It's extraordinary what a gorgeous campus it is, the prettiest new campus that I've seen of any university anywhere in the world. But they started, because the campus wasn't finished, in a hotel. And in a hotel, the students and the faculty got to know each other really well. And on the elevators, in the dining hall, and so on. And it was very interesting that one faculty member and the Duke faculty who came over to teach in Kunshan were so extraordinarily excited by what they were doing. They were just so full of energy. And one of them said to me, you know, I learned for the first time that a university is not a building. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a very telling remark. It is really a community of learning. And I thought that was absolutely true from what I could see in the classes that I attended there. But now the university is also in a set of the most gorgeous buildings I've ever seen.
And I think both have been good places. I think that being in the hotel for several weeks really helped the students to bond with each other and also with their fellow faculty members, because as you say, they saw each other all the time at the gym, at the pool, by the 1,000-item buffet.
Right.
It was actually a really good place for the students to start. They also got to know Kunshan a little bit more because it was located right in the downtown. Yep. And so they were able to walk around, go to restaurants, and get to know the place, which was also very useful. Well,
it's off to a terrific start. The program's really ratcheting up now this spring, larger ones in the fall. You started with more students than Harvard University started. I think we had 8.
That's very good.
In 1638, 2
Uh-huh.
years after we were formally established.
Okay.
So these things take time.
Yes, yes.
And you never know. So we have some questions, and a couple of questions that we asked you, and you have some very interesting responses. And the discussion question was, what are some of the challenges that Duke University and Kunshan face moving forward? What advice would you give to Chancellor Liu and Vice Chancellor Bullock? Ronald Yeo writes in, thinking, and this is not wrong, that there are significant risks operating in China, I should say anywhere in the world. I believe that there is no institutional continuity in China for localized projects, such as the Duke Kunshan project. Many projects in China, unless they are of national strategic value, like the Three Gorges Dam, are dependent on the patronage and support of individuals in local governments rather than by all. And so what happens if an individual is removed from power in this case? And the reason this is important, one of the changes since we last met in Kunshan is that the party secretary, Guan Aiguo, the wonderful, very successful party secretary whom we interviewed and who has overseen so much of Kunshan's development, he has left office, as has the mayor, both of them resigning, really being in a forced way, taking kind of moral responsibility for an industrial accident that happened in Kunshan last summer. So what do you think?
That's right, and it was a big accident. 150 people died.
Yes.
And it was a major event in the life of Kunshan and brought a lot of unwanted attention to the city, and also took up a lot of the city's time in terms of helping the people who were in the hospital to recover, etc. And I think that this addresses one of the issues that Duke has thought about a lot, was what happens after our visionary party secretary, the supportive mayor, what happens after they leave. Mm-hmm. And I think that what we have seen in the past couple of months is a sense of continuity mm-hmm. that we wondered about as well. But the new mayor and the new party secretary have now arrived on site in Kunshan. They have reached out to the DKU leadership, met with them, and assured them of Kunshan's ongoing support for the project. So this is something we actually feel very good about.
Good, very good. Well, Brown A writes in, the continuation of solid political support seems the greatest challenge. They have such a key leader who appears extremely visionary and adept at making things work locally, but must also have good skills for working within higher political levels. My guess, given the way things transpired, Party Secretary Guan will reappear, whether in Kunshan or in some other place, because it is such an able person. But it is inevitable in Chinese politics, when something big like this happens, then people have to take responsibility for it.
I think that that's true. I think it's also a matter of institutional survival, that it survive its founders. Mm-hmm. And we have seen that somewhat in our partners in Wuhan University and in Kunshan. A number of people below the party secretary and mayor level have changed over the past few years, and the project has continued. And now we've seen the transition at the highest local leadership, and the project still continues. So I think this bodes well for the future of DKU. Okay.
Okay. So we have some others who have written in. You want to tell us what Nicole Tam has to say?
Nicole Tam says that the political class in China might bring additional challenges in regards to the party's view on education is changed in such a way that it would impact negatively the curricula or some other major way in which the university functions.
Right, and I think a number of you noticed last week the chill political winds that are blowing out of Beijing. The Minister of Education calling for the teaching of Marxism and of socialism with Chinese characteristics as the core in an ideological battlefront. Universities are not places to learn, according to the Minister of Education, but they're an ideological battleground for the future of China, for the future of the Chinese Communist Party, and so on. And I think, quite frankly, that this is a moment of challenge, a moment of inflection. It's a moment, really a question, much less actually for Duke Kunshan University in my view, but for the great universities such as the ones we visited last week in China. Will they be world-class universities? Not if that, in my view, not if that line of attack continues on them, because that will limit creativity, it will stifle innovation, and it will force good ideas underground rather than above ground where they need to be. And great universities don't grow in a climate of political repression. Duke Kunshan University is different in this regard than Chinese universities. Tell me why.
Well, since it's a joint venture university, there hasn't been any indication, any overt indication, that the ministry's pronouncements are going to apply to not only to DKU but to the other joint venture universities. Nevertheless, it certainly does cause concern among our faculty and administration, both here and there, to hear the statements that were made this past week. As part of DKU's licensing, we submitted a long application to the Ministry of Education, And that included a number of principles that Duke saw as being absolutely central to its operating DKU. And that included freedom of academic inquiry. And so I think that this is something that we will be watching very closely. And as I said, we don't have any indication that these policies will be enforced at the joint ventures, but it bears very close watching.
Right. And you do have, unlike Chinese universities, an independent board.
That's correct. That's actually a very interesting feature. What our Chancellor Liu, likes to call one of our breakthroughs is having this independent board. Our board is 7 members, and it includes 3 from Duke University, 2 from Wuhan, and 2 from Kunshan. And 5 votes are required to move almost anything forward.
Right.
And so the partners really have to work together. But this is an independent institutional board.
Yes, and Mary Bullock, I was talking with her earlier today, and she made it clear to me, but also to others here at Duke, that one has these formal guarantees of academic freedom at DKU, and that the Ministry of Education, perhaps despite what the minister said, they have done nothing but support this, and there has been no interference in instruction this, and she doesn't expect to see any. Nevertheless, this is a story that we will follow in coming weeks.
Yeah.
Now, Ever Boleh.
Well, Ever Boleh, I have worked in Indonesia and Malaysia for a number of years, and so I wondered if this was from somebody from Malaysia.
Yeah.
Boleh meaning to be can do. And this person is actually working on the development of a new university in Malaysia. And he comments that the idea of a master's in management science that caters to the needs of liberal arts and humanity graduates to take on business administration, which is quite similar to what they're doing at Tsinghua University.
Yes, I think it's one that's off to a great start at DKU, but and one that I think we will see other incarnations of. He also suggests, but wonders, why DKU did not more involve Taiwanese, whose support was such a cornerstone for Kunshan's success. And this is something I remember talking about or suggesting some years ago, and I can understand, but it may be something in the future, because a relationship between DKU and some of the great Taiwan universities, in terms of sending students back and forth and so on, would seem to be a natural given Taiwan's centrality in the build-up of Kunshan.
And I think that's a set of relationships we haven't taken full advantage of yet. We have several very senior faculty members here at Duke who are from Taiwan or have strong ties. And they have helped us to make some contacts in the business community, but we have not really followed up on the contacts in the higher education community. And I agree, I think it's something that needs to be done.
Very good. Well, we have a challenge from D18. How does one broach the inevitable problems of the physical distance between Duke and Kunshan? So it's a big challenge. How often have you gone to Kunshan in the years that you've been overseeing this gestation?
Well,
period?
in 4.5 years, I've made 28 trips.
28 trips, okay.
Yes. And I know the answer to that question because I was standing in a long visa line, and the only thing I could do was to count the number of visas in my passport. So I actually do know that it's 28. And a number of people from Duke have also spent considerable time going back and forth with China, helping the systems, the academic systems and the non-academic systems get set up. We also have frequent phone calls that occur either late in the evening or early in the morning for one of us, and Skypes and teleconferences if necessary. The DKU board also meets at least 4 times per year.
You just met this morning by phone.
We just met by telephone. So we do rely heavily on telecommunications, but there's no real substitute for face-to-face. And I think that subsequent telecommunication can be much more effective if you've spent some time face-to-face.
Right. Boston, unlike Raleigh-Durham, we now have a non-stop from Boston to Beijing.
Yes.
And I think you guys should, Beijing you need Shanghai.
Yes.
And, RDU Airport would really be a big step up.
One of our senior leaders here at Duke is actually working on a non-stop flight to Shanghai.
Really?
But we don't know whether that will happen.
Okay. Very, very, very good. Anyway, very good question. Now, PC Zhang writes in again. Would DKU, basically he wants to know about internet. Would DKU consent to the strict internet access restrictions imposed by the Chinese government, which have become more and more strict, particularly in this past year. So many sites being taken down, also virtual private networks, VPNs being limited. What's the situation at DKU?
Well, it was made clear from the very beginning that open access to the internet was vital to our scholars and to our students. And that is how we have proceeded to build the infrastructure at DKU. And so far, we are having excellent access, excellent quality access, and no restrictions.
Excellent. And you have that actually monitored, you have that really through the Duke IT system, do you not?
There's a complex relationship of various servers, but the Duke IT department is quite involved in making sure that everything is working well.
Excellent, excellent. So Eunice Iwasaki says, Kunshan expects Duke University to provide world-class higher education to enhance the human capital of Kunshan. I suppose that's true, but not just of Kunshan. The challenge for Duke University is how to combine its expertise with the agenda of Kunshan and the needs of local and international students without compromising the values upheld by the university. So what do you think? This is a kind of a riff on a question that others have asked. Are the visions of Duke and Kunshan different? Is Kunshan more short-term oriented, problem-solving, Duke in a high-tech park, and Duke having a much more longer-term vision of higher education and its engagement in China beyond the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Well, I think the student has phrased the differences between Kunshan and Duke's perspectives in a very telling manner. I don't think that it's that Kunshan has only short-term needs in mind. I think it's that they have some very specific needs that they'd like to see addressed in terms of the development of the workforce in Kunshan and the area. And Duke, of course, is very interested in that, but also is interested in the general activities of being an elite university, which would not be just limited to things that would be producing research and development for Kunshan as a city. So I think this is a contrast, but so far at least it's a dynamic tension I think that we're working off well, rather than limiting either Kunshan's desires or Duke's.
Okay, that makes my own sense, and as we were doing the case on Kunshan, is that Kunshan, may think, some people in Kunshan may think short term, of course,
yeah.
And they're being graded, as it were, administratively to think shorter rather than longer term. And yet, the leaders with whom I've been acquainted, including Party Secretary Guan, they really have thought long term. If they really wanted a university that was just to focus on technical issues or the IT industry and so on. In fact, there are others that might be a better fit than Duke. And even if they're not of the great prestige of Duke, but technical universities, other, technical colleges, and that they didn't want. They wanted something that would broaden their capacities.
Right. They wanted Stanford and Palo Alto, not
Yeah.
a vocational school.
Right.
Kunshan already has a number of vocational schools in their educational space.
Mm-hmm.
And so while, of course, they want DKU to contribute to the development of the workforce in Kunshan, I think that they do have this much broader vision than just doing that.
Now, there's one pretty, I wouldn't say critical comment, but a really one that one has to take seriously about the whole project from Jonah 32.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Let me just read that. I'm not convinced that schools creating satellite campuses, especially in a different country and jointly with local universities, is a good idea. There will always be the question of whether students really attended the real Duke. Culturally, the satellite campus will be very different, and all the best professors are unlikely to be domiciled permanently away from the main campus. The best students from China that are interested in a Duke education are unlikely to turn down Duke, assuming, of course, they could get in favor of Duke Kunshan. While there have been many such collaborations that have had success in the short term, including many non-U.S. universities, I highly doubt that such schools will do well in the long term against their domestic rivals that are fully local and will over time catch up to global standards.
So I think I understand that, of course, and it isn't meant to be the same as Duke. And yet it is meant to be a university that will have Duke standards.
Right.
And I think this has been understood by President Broadhead, the former provost Peter Gang, the current provost Sally Kornblum, all strongly emphasizing this fact, but it isn't the same. If one thinks of it instead as a new college affiliated with Duke, a new college of Duke University, happens to be in China, and it's deliberately in China for a global audience as well as a Chinese audience, then it's a different thing. I was struck when I was out there in October with your faculty colleagues who were working on the development of the liberal arts curriculum for a liberal arts college 2 or 3 years from now within Duke-Kunshan University. A liberal arts college that, as I've said before, if it were to be successful, as I'm sure it would be, with Duke behind it, would be the most signal achievement in this realm since the establishment of Yenjing University in 1928. It has enormous potential as a residential liberal arts college. But what they saw in DKU was an opportunity to create a liberal arts college that is different from that of Trinity College, which is the undergraduate college here at Duke. Allowed them to think they're unfettered by the existing requirements and the existing departmental structures. How would you today start from scratch a new liberal arts college? And these people, just extraordinary ideas of how to do this. And I think that this is something that will be different from what's done here, but it won't be less good necessarily. You'll have Duke faculty there. You'll have DKU faculty. You'll have DKU students being able to come for a semester or more here at Duke.
That's right.
Duke students who will visit DKU. And so one can think of this as an institution that is enriching Duke, but also giving it the capacity to experiment educationally in a way that no U.S. university can easily do at home. So I think it's not just like a lesser grade. The other area of integration that hasn't happened yet, but I don't know if it will. One of the things if you come to Duke University during the winter, one of the things you will discover that this is a great American research university, great liberal arts college, and a place of basketball fanaticism of a kind that I've never seen in my university, and not much in the northeastern parts of the United States. So students at Duke study abroad in the fall.
That's right.
Why?
They study abroad in the fall so they can be here for the spring when basketball is taking place.
Basketball is taking place. President Broadhead invited me to a basketball game, and I have never seen such levels of intense excitement.
Yes.
As I did on that day a couple of weeks ago in Cameron, the indoor stadium where the iconic place where basketball is played here. And I was bad luck because they lost for the first time at home in 41 games. But they have gone on to now give their current coach, known here as Coach K, his 1,000th victory as a college coach. And my last bit of advice to DKU is that if only they were to add one Chinese player to the starting five, you will have no trouble recruiting Chinese at DKU, because you will be the most famous university by far in China if you have the next Yao Ming come to Duke from China, maybe through DKU. But
I think that's a great idea.
All right.
We're on it.
Nora, thank you very much for joining, and thank you all for joining, and we will see you next week. One final thing, though. We talked about continuity, and we're at a moment of discontinuity in a number of educational ventures. As we mentioned last week, President Chen Jining, the great president of Tsinghua University, is leaving his post virtually overnight to become Minister of the Environment. Now we know that here Party Secretary Guan is leaving. Vice Chancellor Bullock is completing her term as president, as vice chancellor, as executive vice chancellor for Duke Kunshan University, and she too will be stepping down. And you are departing to be the Rowe family director of the Keller Action Center at the Field Museum in Chicago, going back to your academic work. So with all these departures, is it just me? Is everyone fleeing because of my...
Oh, it's just you. You haven't realized yet, right?
No, I'm so... but you're still optimistic.
I am, and I think that all institutions have to survive at least the first turnover in most of the major positions associated with that institution's founding. Then you know you have something that can stand on its own feet going forward. And I'm incredibly optimistic about the future for DKU, and I will be following its development very carefully.
Well, thank you very much, Nora.
Thanks.
See you next week.